I'm not in it. What was I thinking? Gosh dang it. It was Monday, right? I forgot I needed to get into the meeting. It was last Wednesday?
What?
No. It was Monday, the live stream. Here we go.
Yes, we have undefined the general fund departments
Okay. Okay, everybody ready?
Yes.
All right, let's go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today, June 5th at 10:03 a.m. for this work session regarding the budget. It's nice to see a full room of concerned individuals, both county and non-county employees. And, I'd like to, this is a little break from tradition for a work session. I'd like to go ahead and open this meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, as if it were a BOC meeting, please. I pledge
allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we have obviously a difficult and challenged situation that we're going to have to address with the failure of the public safety levy, which is what it is. The people of the county have spoken. They're not desirous to engage that process and that mechanism to continue to fund the operations of the county, the operations of public safety. So we're going to have to find another way to make all of the dots meet. I think it would be helpful at the beginning of this to step in and let's first. Wait, am I in the meeting? Am I up there? Because I'm not.
I don't see. There's a lot of people in the meeting. I don't see you. There's 60 people
I think my
joining.
sign-in didn't go. Okay, I'll be working on that while I'm doing this. Anyway, I think it would be helpful and instructive to review, first of all, the departments that are funded by the general fund. And understand really what we have to work with, and part of the basis for that comment and desire on my part is because there continues to be quite a bit of confusion bandied about, quite a bit of misunderstanding expressed about what is within our power to do fiscally and what is not. And specifically, there is an awful lot of misunderstanding about what funds we as commissioners might be able to move around or utilize in different ways. And so that's going to be a primary topic of discussion today. So Commissioner May, can I ask you to work through and explain which departments fall within the general fund?
So obviously, well, Megan can do that.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, please. I can do it.
Do you have your mic on, Megan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can everybody in the room hear okay? Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
So the
So the
departments
departments within the general fund
are the assessor, juvenile, maintenance, criminal, jail, marine, dunes, surveyor, finance,
tax treasurer,
veterans,
board of
commissioners,
commissioners,
IT,
council,
clerk,
clerk,
DA
prosecution, medical examiner,
support
support enforcement,
and
and
there's a
a
miscellaneous
miscellaneous
departmental
section
section
in the
fund.
general fund.
Funds
That the general fund supports
is
is crime
assistance,
assistance, 911 dispatch,
and
and animal control.
funds
That support the general fund in some capacity
are
are forestry,
law
law library, community corrections,
Charleston
transit lodging tax,
and
and banded assessment.
Okay,
Okay.
And could you put the difference between dedicated funds and the funds that are not dedicated?
yeah,
Yeah.
Commissioner Sweet has asked me to explain the difference between dedicated funds and non-dedicated funds. So dedicated funds constitute the vast majority of the county budget. Those funds are dedicated to specific purposes, and that dedication is not just a statement of purpose or an intention on the part of the Board of Commissioners or the treasurer or anybody else. Those limitations are imposed by different agreements that the county enters into, memoranda of understanding, or other kinds of agreements, legal agreements and contracts that the county enters into. Because I think everybody in the room understands that the vast majority of our funding does not come from within the county, at least not secondarily. Originally, it does in the form of federal taxes and state taxes, but the county goes hand in hand to state or federal public agencies, basically begging for breadcrumbs to be able to run our county. And the response through grants and programs and different kinds of funds that come into the county is based on a memorandum of understanding or a general agreement or a contract of some kind. And part of that agreement is always that the funds have to go to the purpose for which they're designated in that agreement. We can't deviate from that. Otherwise, we would open the county to legal jeopardy through the mechanism of lawsuit or even prosecution if it's deemed that we broke a law. Even though it was in the interest of the county, and really, I think everybody in the room understands the right thing to do. But we have these limitations.
Could I give some examples of those for the
Please
funds? Thank you.
Examples of
Designated funds and sources.
there are several.
There are several.
Just
Mention
a few of
a
those.
few of those.
One would be
Gas
taxes.
taxes. The state collects gas taxes.
And they
return
some of those
to
to
counties and some to the cities.
And they
Designate
those are to be used
for
roads,
road maintenance, road repair,
not
not
for other
for other
purposes.
purposes. Very understand.
That
is almost the sole
funding
source for our road department.
Used to be
There was extra general fund money left over. There is no longer.
Another example would be what we call
community correction. Our county's parole and probation
department. The state
long ago realized that
I think prisons are
very expensive.
And in
And
a lot of ways,
they're nothing but a graduate school for criminals.
So
So
they
they
fund
fund
out of the
out of the savings
savings
that they have enjoyed by not having to have the prison rooms.
They fund
They fund a parole and probation program run by each county.
So that
So that instead of going to prison,
some
some
people
people
go on
go on parole and probation.
We
We obviously can't
redirect
redirect that money to purposes other than for consumer.
Another
Another example would be health and wellness,
primarily
not entirely
funded by
funded by Medicaid dollars,
a federal
a federal program
to provide
health care
and
and
mental
health care, both
physical health
and mental health
for people who
can't afford it
themselves.
themselves.
They give that
They
money
give that money to us.
if we don't want to
We
use
don't
it for
want
that
to
purpose,
we have to reject it.
if we
If we
accept it,
we
we have to use it for the intended
for intended purposes,
not
for
other things
such as law enforcement or
administration
of the county.
So
That's an example of
where a lot
of the money, in essence, the state and federal governments
use
government purposes for counties is the delivery of services
that
that the federal or state and state government
fund,
fund,
and we have
and we have to use those funds for their intended purposes.
Anything to add, Commissioner Main?
No, there's, like you said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Well, you can just take this fund and put it over here. You can take that fund and support the jail. No, we can't do that. We're restricted by law. If we do that, then we become liable and the county becomes liable. It's just not simple. You have to work within the budget law.
So, all that explained, to set context for the discussion today, we have precious few options to be able to carry forward fiscally at the level that we need to and preserve county services at the level that they're at. And I see some faces in the room that aren't regularly here, and so I'd like to express that that every county department that is here, I mean, since I've been in this chair, I've come to understand obviously much better the way the county works and see the departments operating. And my perspective is that every department in this county is headed by an individual who is committed to doing the right thing and doing it for the right reasons and doing it as economically and with the greatest fiscal responsibility possible. And before my time here, the county used to be quite a bit bigger. We used to have over 500 employees. We now have just under 350, I believe. And every department that I see is really running at the bare bones minimum. If there's a department head here who thinks that they could possibly operate their department with one fewer personnel, one fewer employees, I'd really love to see your hand, because I don't think a hand's going to go up. And that's consistent with the observation that I've had. Everybody is working as hard as they can with as little as they can to try to provide the bare minimum of services that are required of us, either by the will of the people or legally, legislatively. Speaking of legislation, I'd like to say one of the burdens that bears down upon the county that's impacted this whole situation, there are a number of them. One of the big ones is a continuation of the stream of unfunded mandates from a government at the state level and the federal level that has no intention of empowering the counties. The intention, from my perspective, is to reappropriate power from the county to the state and to the federal government. everything I see come down the pike is oriented that way, and it's incredibly frustrating. So, you know, you take that factor and you combine it with inflation, the additional costs that are incurred by the county to run these basic operations that we're trying to operate, and continuing pressures from public employee unions. And, and I'll say it again, I know it's not popular with county employees, but my perspective is that there should be no place for public employee unions. Unions should not exist in the public sector. That's my perspective. Somebody's free to try to change my mind, but I don't believe it serves the public interest to have that. And I'm sorry to tell you all that. I see a lot of county employees here. That's my feeling. I love you all, and I think you do a great job, but that's my belief. It puts an unnatural pressure on the wage base and adds to the costs that the county has to try to maintain. And that's not to say that I want anybody to not live a good, prosperous life and make a good, prosperous, decent wage for the good work that you all do. But that's one of the factors.
We need to move back to the budget.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so let's go to the budget.
Actually, I want to insert one more thing. We
Please.
would not be here today if it wasn't for Washington, D.C. restricting the ONC forest.
That's exactly right.
We, in the mid-'80s, got, in today's dollars, for the general fund, $25 million. The SRS thing was a handout. We had existed since the mid-'90s till this year. For next year, 24, 25, 0 for SRS. But we wouldn't be here if they were still cutting on the ONC forest. It's been restricted down, at least in Coos County, down to 5% of what it was for actual land to be harvested. We are a product right now of Washington, D.C.'s policies. Okay, Mr. Chair.
All right. One comment to tag onto that is that I continue to view the failure of the BLM to harvest ONC at the levels that are obligated by the 1937 or the ONC Act
37.
is an illegal taking.
It's
That's
not-
what it is.
It's not the local BLM.
Can we get back to the budget?
They get their direction from Washington, D.C.
So, I think I'd also like to address it, and this is getting to the budget now, Commissioner Sweet. We've had a fair amount of participation and involvement, primarily on the part of Chris Castleman. Chris, thanks for your concern and inputs. Chris, you sent us all an email with a PDF attachment yesterday, and I know we've all read it. We've analyzed it. There are a couple of ideas in there that we could springboard off of. There are a lot of things that you've put in here that frankly are completely impracticable. It can't be done. So we can go through and articulate some of those, and we can try to find other areas that we might be able to affect our overall budget to come to a balance that we're going to have to implement in July for any revisions that we need to make to the ballot or to the budget. Our current total deficit is just about,
I have an update.
well, not deficit, but shortfall. What is the updated amount, Master of Coin?
So our current deficit is $3,555,516.
Okay,
That includes an adjustment to the O&C payment now that we have the actual amount, bringing the jail and DA back into the general fund. And then a small cut in the finance department of $27,500 for a cash management services.
So
Okay,
you,
so-
so I'm clear on this, Megan, you have already subtracted the cost of the third pod that we had planned to open.
Yes, anything that was included in the levy, the extra positions, the third pod in the jail, and all the costs associated with that.
Second pod still in,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit of an improvement over the last number that we got, slightly.
Slightly.
Thank you for that. So there are minute savings that that could be realized by making a little cut here, a little cut there. You know, I see maybe a couple of $100,000, maybe 300. It's not very much. For the record, I introduced an agenda item a couple of months ago to reduce the commissioner's salary by 20%. That was voted down. I am going to reintroduce that agenda item, and that realizes a net savings of about $45,000 to the county. So, you know, we can do little things like that, but we still have a major hole to fill at 3.6 million total. We have $1.3 million remaining in the ARP funds account. There's actually 1.6, I think, but 300 of that is already committed. We can't do anything else with that. So 1.3 remains available for use at our discretion. Within our discretion, one of the items of concern is repairs and maintenance to the gas pipeline that we are going to be on the hook for. We don't anticipate those repairs to come anywhere near that 1.3 million, but we don't really know until we get into the sheet wall repair that is needed along the river up here. But nonetheless, my inclination over this last week or so has been to look at, well, I'm going to just lay out a couple of ideas that I have. Since I'm the chair, it's my prerogative. Number one, I think that we should commit the entire $1.3 million remaining in ARP to the general fund in the interest of keeping that second pod open, not having to lay off any employees. That doesn't get us there. We're still short about 2.3 million in order to fill that gap for the remaining or for the 24-25 budget year. It is my belief that we can fill that gap through volunteer fundraising. So the vision that I have is to pull together a team from both sides of the aisle, people who are Democrat thinkers, people who are Republican thinkers, conservative, liberal. I don't care. We're all on the same team, just like wind energy. None of us wants it. We're all on the same team. We all have an interest in making this county work right. So we should all be involved in this fundraising effort that involves creation of a website, creation of a QR code for a quick donation opportunity to a Give, Send, Go account that is not run by the county, run by private individuals, endorsed by the county, supported by the county. And I've had a lot of people who have said they would be happy to contribute to a fund like that to help us keep the jail open and keep county operations running. That's not a permanent fix, okay? That's a stopgap. The same thing I said about the the public safety levy. It was a stopgap, was the only thing. That's never going to fix it long run, and this contribution program is not going to fix it long term either. But it can fill that $2.3 million gap in the next 60 days. I'm convinced of it. If we order 500 signs from the sign shop that we know that's very inexpensive, slather the county with those signs, get everybody on board, pump social media, say, look, if you voted for the levy, if you supported the levy, then please help us by contributing to this fund. Help us get to the next step. What is the next step? Well, there is an idea that came to the fore, and I'll give attribution if it's permitted. I won't do that out of step. But this idea did not originate with me. But I've spoken to a number of people, and there seems to be a fairly decent level of support for it. The idea is this: if we could invent a program to actually reduce the property tax permanent rate levy, which is currently $1.08 per thousand of assessed value, if we could come up with a way to actually reduce that by, say, maybe 25 cents or so, and that would be covered by the implementation of a 1% countywide sales tax, retail sales tax, 1%, maybe 1.5%. I don't know exactly. Now, don't get me wrong, I hate taxes. I'm not in support of it. But we do have to operate our local accessible government that provides these direct services to our own people in some fashion, some way. We have to do it. Here's the benefits to a 1 or a 1.5% county sales tax. Number one, it shifts tax burden from property owners to tourism. Okay, so not currently the general fund is only supported by our property tax locally. That's the only thing, and so it's all on property owners. If we could implement a small county sales tax that wouldn't apply to groceries or pharmaceuticals, that my initial calculations, thanks to actually Sheriff came up with this some of this data, but it looks like it would raise about $10 million a year for the county at 1% every year. One benefit to that is that it paces with inflation. Okay, we don't have to keep coming back and asking for more and more and more, because inflation will match what effect it has on the county. So I think that it's a worthwhile idea to put in front of the voters. And if we can fill the rest of this budget year with that donation scheme that I have articulated, move toward putting this county sales tax on the ballot for November and see what the people say. Would you be willing to trade a 1 or 1.5% local sales tax for a reduction? I don't know what the reduction would be in the base rate on property tax. Maybe it would be 25 cents. Maybe it would be a little more than that. Then, if the people are supportive of that, then so be it. We're off to the races. If not, then, then we would have to absolutely just start cutting county services. I don't know what that looks like or where it happens. Every department that we have just about is either legislatively required or absolutely needed. So So those are the ideas. I've mentioned kind of cryptically and mysteriously that there were a couple ideas we're working on. Those are them. That's it. And you know, honestly, I'm going to get filleted for that. There's no doubt, because I know there's, you know, whatever. I don't care. Okay. All we're trying to do is do the right thing for everybody. So
I'd like to weigh in on that.
Weigh in on it, please, Commissioner Sweet.
I absolutely agree that we need to look for funding, perhaps new sources of funding. And I think we need to turn every stone. And I'll be for that. I think that's a great idea. Another idea might be kind of a luxury tax on food and drink. I don't think we have a snowball's chance of wherever it is to get enough money through donations to save the county. I am not willing to balance the budget on the backs of any of our staff or our elected officials. And I am not willing to fund ongoing expenses like payroll out of reserves and funds like the ARP fund that are one-time money. They're gone, they're gone. If we're gonna hire people, we need to be able to assure them that they're going to, after they move their families here, we've got a tough row ahead of us already, because we've done just the opposite. And I don't want to repeat that. So I want to go on record that I will not be supportive. I like the idea, Rod, but I will not be supportive of using the ARP fund or any other of our reserves to fund our shortfall. I will not agree to cutting anyone's pay at this point. I do not think that we can fill this gap with donations. Incidentally, so far this year, we got $200 of donations.
With no program.
With no program. But we talked about a program, but it didn't go anywhere. And I absolutely agree that we need to look for other sources of revenue, but I also will not base today's conversation, next year's budget, on something that might be. We've already heard from the citizens loud and clear that they do not want more taxes. We can try other forms. So I don't know what, to me those are off the table for today's discussion. So not because they're bad ideas, just because we can't count on them. And Mr. Maine, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. That's my feeling. If it's yours, then that eliminates some part of what we might discuss today.
Well, as far as donations go, I just calculated out you'd need over $6,000 a day in donations to make up the gap, with throwing in the ARP. I don't think that's going to happen. Nobody's going to pony up $6,000 plus a day to keep status quo right now for the budget shortfall we have. We can levy less. Yeah, we can do that. Can we have a 1 or 1.5% sales tax or whatever? Well, what just happened a couple weeks ago? 60% plus said no. No more taxes, period. If you look at the demographics of Coos County, there's 65,000 roughly of us. 23,000 plus, and Michael over there, he can confirm, stated that we have over 23,000 people on the Oregon Health Plan in Coos County. In other words, they can't afford their own health insurance. They don't have health insurance through their employer, or they just can't afford it, and they've gone to the Oregon Health Plan. They still have to go to the grocery store. My wife is telling me she sees people in the store, older folks, on fixed incomes probably, looking at things, calculating on their little sheet that they take to the grocery store and put things back. That's sad. Talking about another sales tax on top of, we would have to do a whole bunch of exemptions, I assume, food, prescriptions, etc. I don't know what would it bring in, but it has to be voted on by this fall, which doesn't cover the gap now, starting in July. Also, to implement this tax, proposed tax, you're going to have to convert all the business systems over to calculate that tax. We would probably have to pay for that. I had an estimate last night talking to somebody. They thought the cost might be upwards of $500,000. If we had $500,000, we'd be throwing it into the budget right now, I would assume. So, just to implement the thing, it's nice to talk about, but doubt it would happen with the voters. And there would have to be a whole lot of things worked out, even if we even thought about doing it. But since the folks have spoken a couple of weeks ago, said no more taxes, I doubt it's going to fly. So what we have to do right now is figure out how many open positions we have right now unfilled in the general fund departments. Probably eliminate those, any other minor things. And then any, obviously 80 some, almost 90% of our expenses are personnel. So then we have to go through and figure out who stays and who goes, unfortunately. That's not anything I ever want to do. Because we have some amazing, excellent people. When I go to other counties, I talk to other government agencies and the complaints they have. We are a shining star here. Amazing. So, if Megan, would you talk about how much we could save by not adding, I don't know if you calculated this, not adding the open positions or taking them out? I know we have one in maintenance, we've got one in the assessor's office, we've got one, I think, in DA, we've got other ones, I think, unfilled positions. And that's not a body, so that's a lot more palatable for me than saying, okay, we have to remove 5 bodies out of some department. I don't like that at all.
I've been told the sheriff has done a lot of good work. And anything he does is going to reduce his level of services. But I don't know if we want to talk about that now.
Well, I want to go through and see where we're at first with the other reductions before we have the obvious question about the largest department within the general fund.
So some of these may have been filled since we did this spreadsheet. So if the department heads are here, I'd appreciate it if they speak up.
Okay, Paul's here, assessor's here.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I do show one vacant in the assessor, but kind of think that has been filled. Do you have a vacant position? No? Okay. I show one in juvenile.
So, Brian.
Okay.
Okay.
Part-time in the sheriff's department, an evidence property clerk.
Still vacant?
Yes. And then, deputy position in criminal, is there one that's vacant? Yeah, okay. 4 vacant in dispatch. I know that's not the general fund, but they get supplemented by the general fund.
How many?
4. Five.
I think part of that, though, they're going crazy trying to
Yeah,
just
no, I
keep
know.
dispatch going. They need some more bodies, because it's,
I'm just
We don't
answering
we
the
don't approve
question.
them
Yeah.
all, but we need
Yeah, I
to
got
you.
get the list out.
Yeah.
go ahead.
I show a deputy in Dunes. Is that correct? Animal shelter operator in animal control. And I show 2 deputy DAs. But is that 2 or is it just, it is still 2? Okay. That's all I show, unless anybody else has a recent vacancy.
Dollars.
Do you want all of those included?
Well, I hesitate about the dispatch folks,
Yeah.
because they do police, fire, ambulance, all that stuff, so, for
Yeah.
most of the county. And they're highly trained folks, and
And it's-
they're working
Let's take
10,
that one off.
12,
Yeah.
Dunes, you said it's a contract position. We don't save anything by
right,
Right.
right.
So we're taking off Dunes?
Yes.
dunes.
I wouldn't include dispatch, because that's just,
I've already taken that out.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then assessor did not have a vacant one. So we're left with 1 in juvenile, 2 in, 1.5 in criminal, 1 in animal control, and 2 in prosecution.
We tried it for a couple months without the animal shelter operator, and I don't think the animal shelter will be functional without that. Unfortunately, I was hoping that could be a spot to go, but it's pretty crucial. Sorry. I have some materials and services that cover that differences.
Now, I will interject while Megan's figuring things out. Curry County has the same problem. I had it.
Worse.
Huh?
Only worse.
Only worse, yeah. And their levy went down to 65, 35, or what it was, much more than ours. So the commissioners had meetings this last week, and I had it confirmed by 2 different folks that everybody in the assessor's office is eliminated except the assessor. Everybody in the clerk's office is eliminated except for the clerk. Holy, how are they going to? Yeah, please.
You have to keep in mind the size, they're counting the third of our size.
I know, I know.
In our office, in elections,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, she's down to 1 Curry now.
Yeah,
We have 2,
I
that's myself.
know.
So we actually, because we're 3 times bigger,
yes, I
we
got
have
you.
the same number.
I know. They got 20-some thousand, we got
Keep that in mind.
65.
I just don't know if
I know. What I was gonna say was, I don't know how they're gonna operate. Because the assessor determines the values, then transmits that to the tax collector, and the tax collector sends out the tax bills. They receive all the payments, and then they distribute that to the 76-something different taxing districts we have, all the cities, all the drainage districts, water districts, fire districts, you name it. That's how they all get their funds. Huh? I mean, it's all intertwined together here. if folks don't realize how the budget works and how all these agencies are intertwined with county assessment and tax collection and tax distribution. So I don't know how they're gonna function. But they're in worse shape than we are, and they cut the DA, sheriff, et cetera, by 41%.
My understanding is they're not gonna have control.
Okay,
Just the jail.
I didn't know that part.
It's reminiscent of Josephine County in 2011.
Just so you know, we're not the only ones. And I talked to Commissioner in Douglas County, and in a year or two, they're gonna be in the same situation.
Okay, what is it, if we,
571,000.
571?
Okay, so we're down to 3.
So now the sheriff has some other things he's talked about, I understand. I haven't talked to him, but is it appropriate this time to?
Well, wait a minute, are we gonna do eliminate the open positions first?
Well, we just put a number on it. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, let's not make that decision yet.
All right,
So those are just ones that we didn't ourselves cross off. So that.
okay, so we're down to roughly 3, Megan. 2.9 something,
Yeah,
almost 3.
so,
Can I get some clarification? Do you guys still have the maintenance position in there vacant, Megan?
No,
thank you for bringing that up.
it is not.
Because we have contracted with Fairness to fill that.
Oh,
So I just want to make sure that's not in there. If it is, I need to make some.
Kyla, how did that impact your budget?
We had budgeted to have 4 positions.
Mhm.
1 maintenance supervisor and 3 maintenance.
Yeah, so
That
the,
was budgeted.
but the contracted position fell within the parameters of your budget for an employee position.
Yes.
All right.
so do we add one more for maintenance?
No,
No, because she
What?
she didn't show a vacancy there.
no, because it happened quite recently, and I wasn't aware this was gonna be a question, so I didn't have.
Okay,
But could we eliminate the position? Okay, it's filled. So, okay,
Okay.
it's on the tape, not part of this discussion.
so I think it might be a good moment, Sheriff, to go ahead and talk about what you have come up with. Yeah,
Maybe come forward.
yeah.
Gabe? Oh, okay.
I'll just stand.
I have another mic over here.
I'll sit next to me.
Morning, Captain.
Good morning. So, I mean, this has been incredibly difficult because I wasn't sure what it looked like. You know, where, how much, what to cut. Kind of a wild wild guesses.
I think inappropriate, Sheriff, I think on this occasion, inappropriate language is probably appropriate.
I'll try not to.
And what I'm,
Hold on. Let's not let that go wild here.
what I might
Maintain a little
say
bit
though
more.
is, this is probably not the only meeting we're gonna have.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to work
This
down,
year.
and it's gonna take a while. And really tough decisions.
It's incredibly tough. This is difficult. And we in the sheriff's office were charged
Oh,
with
okay.
the security of the people.
Audrey can't hear Gabe.
There's
Audrey cannot hear Gabe.
Audrey cannot hear Gabe. Okay.
You might have to pull that up.
Sorry, Audrey. Thanks. You know, we take this charge seriously, and I'll just speak up. How's that?
Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me online? Thank you. Of course, we take the charge seriously, and it's obviously, I think every department is important. I get that as well. You know, they have great people and they do a good job. Some of the considerations we're looking at, you know, we talked about maybe completely getting rid of patrol and just having the jail, but 4002 recriminalized drugs. Come September, Hughes and Curry.
You put your name in there?
It didn't pass a levy of some sort recently. Josephine got the passing district. Mary and Lynn, they got a levy passed. It sounds like Douglas might be in trouble, but they have a much better base than us. We're going to be the sanctuary for criminals and drugs. We're going to be 110 was for Oregon here, and I'm really concerned about it. So I can't eliminate patrol. It's too important. It's 43.6% of the population of the county, over everything but 29 square miles that they take care of, with 2 or 3 right now. And you're right about the unfunded mandates. I have a mandate to be accredited by July of 26. From what I hear with other counties, that takes upwards of 6 to 9 years and $500,000. That's something I'm gonna have to talk to you guys about soon. Just found out the state is continually, their Department of Agriculture is gonna charge us to come down and look at our books, how many dogs we got once a year. Anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500, $2,200, I guess. And that's not a lot of money, really, but it's really frustrating. So we've looked at stuff, how do we make up the difference? How can we help? Because we're in the general fund, and police should never be a money-making venture. But do we charge a booking fee for the cities? They're not in any better shape than us. Do we charge for animal control? Not a mandate that we go into cities and collect their dogs. I don't want to do that. I want to be a good partner to them, but I don't know that we're going to have a choice. So that's some stuff we'll talk about again in the future. So when we looked at this, we looked at a modular concept. What does it cost to close down a pod? What does it cost to get rid of one whole shift on patrol? Or we might have to leave the county unprotected overnight. And really, it's really difficult. Where do you take it from? Especially when we don't know what it is. And if we're looking at the entirety of the $2.97 million coming to our office, I'm gonna have to redo some math, redo some ideas. So I don't have enough for that.
I don't think we're there yet.
That's good. If we reduced the pod in the jail, went back to 49, that's a savings of about $1,048,000.
$1,048,000.
Yes, sir.
And do you have any idea, Sheriff, if we were to close that second pod, go back to 49 beds, we save $1 million something. Do you have any calculus what the long-term cost resulting from that closure would be to the county in terms of additional prosecutions and crime?
You know, it's going to be catch and release. You know, we're at 49 beds. We have several murder suspects. We have sex offenders. We have rapists. We have people that we can't release out into the public, but we can't take in anymore. So what ends up happening is these people get released. Just here, as a resident of Coquille, they get released here into Coquille. I've had my own property vandalized. You know, they vandalize stuff inside town. They go back to doing exactly what it is that they were doing before. The cost is, who knows? It depends on what's damaged, stolen, or otherwise done. And that's just in the cost of dollars. We're not talking about the cost of the human turmoil.
Yeah, and I think so a couple things about it. I think it would be a good, and I don't want to throw you under the bus, I'm sorry, but it would probably be a good time to bring up the DA as well and see what the repercussions of his losses would be as far as what crimes are going to be prosecuted. But you're absolutely right, crime increases cost. Businesses have to increase their cost.
Right.
Cover for that crime.
Right. And an exacerbation that I'll add in that I know you guys are already aware of is that when we lose the capacity to detain criminals, we lose the stick that community corrections has to force these parolees into compliance, right?
So last year, over the last 50 weeks, we got 2 weeks left in this year to capture, but based on June 16th is when we could pull the stats. Dispatch handled or accepted 46,394 total calls. Of those, 39,934 were law enforcement, 28,890 were the sheriff's office. About 29,000 calls. Not all of those resulted in arrests or even reports. just an example, 2,093 bookings in the jail. We've had between 66 and 79, I think, since we've opened the jail. We go back to 49. We'll be putting 20 to 30 people on the street. So I'll stop talking for a minute. Paul, if you want to talk.
In partial answer to the question about the cost to the community, the two positions that are open, deputy DA positions that are open that are on the block, and I understand that they go. But we've made some internal decisions about the caseload. I cannot continue to prosecute everything that comes in the door with just 6 deputy DAs. I can't do it. And I understand that the 7th and 8th position are most likely going to go, all right? But I want people out there to understand is that I'm going to stop prosecuting C misdemeanors, which would be like theft 3s, minor shopliftings, criminal trespass 2s, those type of crimes. We're going to stop. We're not even going to accept them from the police. We'll send them back marked rejected due to insufficient resources. And I'm also on B misdemeanors right now looking at not prosecuting disorderly conducts in the 2nd degree. We're not even going to look at them because
What's that crime look like?
disorderly conduct in 2nd degree.
Yeah.
These are people that are. It's usually somebody that's got drunk or is high or is mentally ill, is causing an issue, raising a stink in a neighborhood, something along that line, or is standing out in the middle of the street impeding traffic. That type of thing is what we're looking at.
Well, thank God that doesn't happen much in Coos County.
Well, I had some numbers run on that, and I think we had I have pending right now for people to look at somewhere around 70 disorderly conduct 2s to look at.
I'm surprised it's that low.
And the other thing that we're going to do is that there's a lot of defendants, I shouldn't say a lot, we have a number of defendants that are in the community under what's called community restoration. They've been told that the court's made a determination they're not able to aid and assist in their defense, and they put them in what's called community restoration because we don't have a resource at the state hospital for these people. Because of the federal court order, the Mossman order, they can't go to the hospital anymore, some of these people. And so what happens is we put them on community restoration in hopes that somehow they get magically restored to competency so we can proceed with the case. And frankly, our success rate has been extremely low. I've instructed my deputies that in the future that if we get to a case that is community restoration with no hope of sending them to the hospital, if they violate their community restoration program, it's taken up too much time for us to continue and follow those cases with no return. And so we're just, when we get to that point, we're going to dismiss the case and move on. These are things that we have to do to lower our caseload. And I'm not sure what I'm proposing or what I intend to do at this point will be enough. But that's what I want people to understand. And I understand where we're coming from. We've got to make some cuts. And I totally understand why the 2 positions in my office got to go. But there's consequences, and the public needs to know this.
Along a similar trope, if depending on how this all looks at the end, we've began a planning process in terms of how we're going to respond to certain types of things moving forward, depending on our ultimate staffing in the patrol division. Keep in mind, it's like painting a Monet painting in a dark room. You know, you turn on the lights, it's not going to look pretty. When we just don't know what it's going to look like at the end. So we initially came out with 3 priority calls for service. Priority 1 being the most important, which includes, and this is not an all-inclusive list, Measure 11 crimes, assaults, in progress burglaries, domestic violence, alleged child and vulnerable adult crimes, and situations arising in imminent danger of life or limb. For those, we would authorize a call out of a deputy, and it should be handled during work hours. I mean, that's the first priority. A priority 2 call would be a cold burglary, residential and business alarms, theft 1, theft 2, minor traffic crashes. And for those, they'll be handled at the first available opportunity after priority 1 calls. And no call outs are authorized after hours. Priority 3, these calls are your disorderly conducts, your trespassing, abandoned vehicles, theft 3, shoplifting, certain animal complaints that don't result in injury. And those will be handled as time is available. And if everybody's gone home, then a citizen self-reporting form will be generated and sent to that person for documentation purposes. So kind of the same, along the same trope as District Attorney Frazier, but depending on how it looks like, that could change too.
So that's all to answer the, what's the cost of the community question.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to put into dollars.
I would also want to add in about my department, the medical examiner. I can't cut any more out of the medical examiner's budget.
Right.
You asked me to prepare a 15% reduction, which actually I couldn't get there without laying people off, so I gave you a 12.5, but even then, there'll be no money to buy body bags, gloves, drug test kits, no money for gas to pay for Chris to go to scenes. If you cut $34,000 out of the medical examiner's budget, you might as well close the program because we're just not going to be able to operate. The child support program, you asked me to propose a cut there, 15%. It turns out to be $7,000. But the county contribution would be $7,000, but the ripple effect would be it's a total of $19,000 because it affects how much money we get from the states and the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And we're laying people off in child support. If we lay people off in child support, we're not going to have the people out there that's going to be able to do all the enforcement that needs to be done. And so we're going to have a ripple effect. Maybe not this year, but next year we're going to have a decrease in the amount of money that's coming in because we don't have the people out there to help collect the child support. Last year they collected slightly over $3 million for kids in Coos County. And if we're going to cut child support, we might as well start looking about getting rid of that program entirely. I mean, and I don't want to do it because I think they have a significant impact in the community, and it doesn't cost the county that much. Most of it is funded by the state and feds, but you know, $7,000 cut equates to $19,000 cut, and then we have to take out our part-time position. We'd have to take out training and travel and all this other stuff. And so how do I pay to send these people to the training that they're required to have? So, you know, in victims assistance, we gave you a budget that was a 16% reduction over last year because the feds are giving us some more money. So you're not going to save any money by cutting the CVA. So, I mean, the only place in my department you can cut, basically, is what I'm saying is prosecution. And you know, take the 2 positions, understand that, but I can't do everything that comes in the door.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank all you've done. And you. It's hard, really hard. It's emotional. But I think we've got to seal ourselves to the fact that we're, excuse the vulgarity, shit out of money. Let's proceed talking about what other work the sheriff has done, and see where we end up with that. And I suspect that the next step would be that we'll have a sizable gap that we're going to have to go through each department's budget and try to find the remaining dollars. And that may result of some of these dollars that we're taking out now being put back in, may result on a priority basis. But I'd like to kind of push that as the procedure we follow. Does that work for the two of you and for the treasurer, finance director?
I'm agreeable to that.
Okay, just to be clear, if you cut me any more deputy DAs, it's gonna be more crimes we're not prosecuting. I just want you to be aware of that.
Yeah,
Understood.
I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We can't until we're done.
I need to go on record to say that, you know, and this will not affect just the county or the sheriff's office, it's gonna affect every city in the county.
Okay.
Sheriff?
Okay.
What else have you identified, Sheriff?
No, this sucks. Looking at materials and services, I can go through line item if you want. I got 6 items on here. The biggest one's the cars. If we don't ask for 2 cars we got this year, we'll search for grants, I guess, but I can turn back $218,032. You need those by line item. That's cars. Unfortunately, that's the first watch. That's a mental health program for the deputies. Celebrite, which we use to look into phones typically for child-related offenses. ERAD, some vehicle expenses because there'll be less on the road. If we're looking at on patrol, 1 deputy sheriff, 1 sergeant. We can make it work. Potentially 1 of the civil personnel. That would be a subtotal on criminal side of 755,097 or 098. We don't use pennies.
$755,098.
We look in the jail, 1 senior sergeant, 7 deputies, and 1 maintenance worker, $899,819. $820. $899,820. I'd mentioned before, $1,043,000. I forgot to add in the $22,000 that we'll have to pay for each person for unemployment. So I subtracted that from the total.
Well, that reduction in the jail, that would close the second pot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh,
I thought you had $1,048,000.
I forgot to add in the unemployment cost for each person that we have to lay off. It's $22,000.
But so the $899 is in addition to the savings, is it, or cost reduction?
That's the savings from closing a pod.
Okay.
so,
okay.
and then you add the unemployment on top of that, you come with the 1.048.
Okay.
Not savings reduction.
But
Just so we're clear, this is going by basically division. So the first was the criminal division. Now we're at the jail.
all right.
We look at the Marine position that's open, or no, not open. The way the Marine funding works, even though it's contracts, it's partial payment. So if we shift all that to 1 person and eliminate one of the positions there, it would reduce cost by $134,208. And then 1 dispatcher. So 1 dispatcher split between general fund and PSAP would be respectively $59,837, $36,694 for a total of $1.885656. Some of those sections are going to suffer pretty hard.
Okay.
188,656.
1885656.
656.
All right.
And I'm physically sick right now. Point that
All right. Anything else, Sheriff?
Nope, that's all I got.
Okay. Captain. All right.
So that leaves us with if we were to do all those drastic things, that would still leave us with a deficit of $1,089,000. Is that about right, Megan?
You're gonna have to give me a second. Yeah.
Pardon me?
Captain Samuel, microphone.
Sorry.
No, no worries.
We're not sure there yet.
That 1855 is about 51% of the shortfall. I don't know why that's important, but.
All right.
I'm almost there. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry.
While Megan is still working on that number, I'll speak to the room and ask if anyone has comments, input, or questions during any of this process. Please do feel free to pipe up with that. And Chris, yeah, go ahead, Chris. What do you got? Hold 1 second. Do you have it, Megan? No? Okay. Yeah, you do? Okay. What is that number?
I'm not confident yet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Chris.
Sheriff, it looks like the microphone on the podium got muted.
I'm Chris Castleman from Coos County.
Thank you.
I don't really know where to start other than like this process right now is wrong. We should not be starting with law enforcement. This is wrong. I mean, I could sit down now and that's all I have to say, really.
Thank you.
Why are we not having the assessor up here explaining? He has the approved budget just a few months ago was 1.674 million, almost $1.7 million. Why are we not looking at how to reduce that down to like in Curry County, just the assessor? I mean, why are we not having the assessor talk about what that would affect, how that would affect the county? Like we heard from the DA and from the sheriff, we're going to be having shoplifters.
Okay, Chris, hold on. I'm going to
conduct.
stop you right there. Okay, just the order of sequence has nothing to do with the prioritization of application. Okay, so all we're doing is we're moving through the departments here in the same order that we did them in the budget hearings. That's the only thing that's happening here. So you're working on a mistaken assumption right now.
Sure, then just ignore me. So I'd like to hear from the assessor how cutting their budget down to just the assessor like Curry County did, how would that affect our county? Like if by eliminating the law enforcement presence in the county would have shoplifters and disorderly conduct and other misdemeanor criminals just running rampant, well, that's a shitty situation for Coos County. I mean, if we did the same cuts to the assessor's office, would people be freaking out because, oh no, the assessor's not gonna come and reassess my new addition to my house? Like, I don't think people would care about that. Like, people care if, you can't trust that your kids can walk to school and be safe. Like that, people care about that.
Right.
I don't think people care if their properties aren't reassessed or if new properties aren't being reassessed. Like, Bob, you're talking about, if we cut the assessor's office, we wouldn't be able to collect taxes. That's not true. We can still collect taxes. Everyone's house is already assessed as is, and that's how the bill would continue. They'd get a bill next year for the same amount. It just wouldn't You know, if somebody added an addition to their house, it wouldn't be reassessed. I don't think anyone's gonna complain about that.
Okay.
The other thing I'll say is that a couple months ago, we went through and we asked all the departments to provide a 15% cut budget. So we have those numbers, we have those figures. I didn't use a calculator, I just did it really quick off my head. But with those 15% cut budgets, leaving out the jail and the prosecutor's office and dispatch and animal control, some of those that were mentioned that were like very crucial, it's about $2 million. Those cuts total about $2 million. So instead of trying to figure out how to cut $2 million from the sheriff's office, look at all those other numbers. It's about $2 million. We'd be left, because you're talking about a $3 million deficit we're trying to figure out right now. We remove those other departments. If we cut 15% from them, we're down to $1 million deficit, and then you have the ARPA funds. That gets us through to next year. So we're not trying to fund this gap with fundraising. It will actually get us through to next year. And you'd have a year to figure out the sales tax thing. You know, you'd have a year to put that on or you'd have 6 months or so to put it on the ballot, but you'd have a year to prove that that can work. You'd have more space and we'd be able to figure it out. The same thing with the clerk. The clerk has almost an $800,000 budget. And I know she's gonna say that she really needs it all, and I bet she does. But if it's between the clerk and the assessor and the jail, like, we're not just trying to cut the assessor or cut the clerk. We're trying to figure out, it's an either or situation. And I have no idea why you guys would ever cut law enforcement. Bob even said in 2009 in a World newspaper article, it's the last thing he would cut, but it's the first thing you're talking about cutting today. And I know you're saying that's just order of operations or whatever, but it sure as shit sounds like order of priority. We should not be cutting law enforcement. We should absolutely not. Also, please have a meeting in Coos Bay, or the Coos Bay North Bend area at night, like one of these meetings, so working people can attend and voice their concern. There's a lot of people who are upset about this, but they're working. They're working hard to pay property taxes to hopefully keep the jail open.
Thank you.
Commissioner, there's something I would like to address.
Please do,
I'm
Captain.
convicted to do so. We talk about cuts, but what we're really talking about is our neighbors. We're talking about our friends. We're talking about our community members. We're talking about people. We're not just talking about dollars and their lives and livelihoods. And I think that's important to point out.
Thank you. Madam Treasurer.
$1,205,000.
Hi.
I would like us to give the remaining departments time to go through their budgets.
Well, of course.
And reconvene this next week sometime if we can. And
So we
see
have
where we are.
We have a few minutes. We have 40 minutes until noon.
We don't have to last until noon.
No, but of course the other departments need an opportunity here. Mr. Assessor, Steve, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Then we'll get you, Sergeant.
Steve Jansen, County Assessor. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Castleman for coming here, wanting to be involved. But I'd like to point out that, to my knowledge, he has never, ever been to my office. He's never asked me about the operation. He hasn't asked my chief deputy. He hasn't talked to any of my department staff about what it is we do, why we do it, how we do it, or who the beneficiaries are of what we do, which is generating an assessed value so the tax collector can send out the tax bills. It'd be nice before he starts blowing off hot air here, telling us how we need to cut our budget.
MSA, so I couldn't look it up.
If you talk to us and find out some of the details, any of the details.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve, it's been a while since I've been in the assessment business, 08 and before. But if my understanding, and it may have been changed, but once you, let's say, eliminate the assessor's office, the Department of Revenue steps in, does the assessments, and then charges the county and withholds any grants they may get to pay for their expenses. That's still the case? That's true. Okay.
Significant point.
I don't know about the clerk, I assume it's the same way. Madam Clerk?
Julie, can you come up to the microphone, please?
As a point of reference,
Bob, your mic is off.
oh, sorry. When I started 15 years ago. Seemed like yesterday. When I started 15 years ago, the allotted FTE positions was 21. That was down from the 32 when Bob was assessor. All right. We now have me and 14. The amount of required reports, required activity is spread so heavily on the people remaining. I'm really glad I'm retiring. I don't know how they're going to do it. Good luck, Jason. Well, also, if you didn't know, there's about 500 property tax laws that the assessor has to administrate. 500, roughly. Imagine that. Most people don't know that. I do, but most people don't.
And right.
Just as a reminder, the clerk's office does have two separate entities. They have the recording, which is heavily tied in with assessors, and again, there are a lot of laws that fall into that and requirements. So those go hand in hand together. We only have 2 people in that office, one of which has been there over 20 years and will probably retire in the next 5 or 6 years. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge that needs to be passed on to the other person that's in the office at this time. The other part of our department is the election office. And again, I don't have a number as to how many laws we are required to follow, but it is a big book and it does change monthly. So we are constantly upkeeping on the laws. I would like to also reiterate that Curry County is a third of our size. Mm-hmm. And to put that elections on her, that one person, is going to be a huge strain. I know her personally, and it is a huge strain. And quite honestly, I think that they're going to have a hard time filling that position in the future if they continue to put that strain on her, because it's a lot. And so we are 3 times that size. And so really our staffing right now is the same as her being one person by herself. And that's if you include myself in that. There's 2 in the office and myself. So we have the same staffing level now as her being one person.
So my question was really about, like the assessor, if they don't do the job, then the Department of Revenue comes in and does the job and charges the county. Is that the same way with the Secretary of State?
As far as elections go?
Either one.
We are required to do it. I would have to look into what the law would be if we weren't going to do it. I've never considered that as an option. So being a newer clerk, I don't have that answer off the top of my head, and okay. I would not like to give you false information.
Maybe next time we meet.
But I know that we're required to do it, and in cases where we're not doing our job, the Secretary of State would step in. So that would be my assumption at this point as well. But I will get back to you with the answer on that. Okay. But I would like to just point out that in the past, there has been a suggestion from Mr. Castleman that we use a volunteer in the elections office to replace that position that would be on the chopping block. And this is institutional knowledge. This isn't something that you can just step in as a volunteer and come in a few hours a week and you're good to go. It takes, as they say, on an average 4 years for you to learn all of it, because there are that many different types of elections that happen. So The idea that that isn't worthy of being paid is laughable. So I just want that to be put out there as well. It's a tough position, and it requires someone with good customer service, someone who's on the ball, someone who's willing to learn the laws, someone who has integrity and is going to show up. And that's what we have in there right now. And to lose that person is going to be detrimental to our office.
Okay, all right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to just call a quick 5-minute recess. I know we're almost at noon anyway, but I need that recess, so we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, we can get